Hello and welcome to Metro Home Theater Tech Tips. I'm Brent McCall.
I'm Adam Rogers.
And welcome to join us. So, what do we got going on today, Adam? And more importantly, who's our sponsor?
Today's episode is sponsored by the letter E.
Why the letter E?
For extenders, because we're going to be talking today about extenders. And we're going to use our extender lineup that we have to talk about the different areas where you should pick and choose which extender should I use here, which extender should I use there, and what are the important things to look at for the, what kind of project are you working with, so you can pick out the feature sets that you need for that project to, one, get the picture across from the transmission side to the receiving side, but most importantly, to keep that picture going the distance to get to the television.
Wait a minute, do you mean that what you're doing with the job should determine what extender you use?
Very much so.
It's not so.
Yeah, just like with anything else that you guys have out there in the world, there is not a one-piece-fits-all solution out there. We've been striving for that part for years, and before I even started working here, Brent's been working on that for years, and unfortunately, I just don't think it's going to be available out there.
No, because that cost, value, performance vary dramatically depending on the job requirements.
Right, and especially when you talk about the different feature sets and everything else that you need from that part, it really, really matters as to which one you need to pick out of the bunch.
Okay, well, since you are the most current installer at this table.
Right, sure.
And I'm the laziest.
Sure.
I'm going to ask you the questions. What is important to you as an integrator in selecting which extender you use for a job?
So we've got a couple things listed out here. You and I met before the show today to kind of list out a couple things. As always, everybody, thank you for watching the episode with us today. Leave your comments and leave your questions down in the chat, or if you are catching us after the live stream and you're watching this as a pre-recorded show, feel free to put your comments down in the comment section below. You can also, of course, contact us by email. My email is adamr@metrohometheater.com. And, of course, you can contact Brent at his...
brentam@metrohometheater.com.
Right. So any questions, any comments, and, feel free to leave those down below so that you can see what the, let us know. What have you run into? What is the biggest feature set that you look for when you are picking out your extenders? What's the most important thing for you? Now...
Wait. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Yes.
And to Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
Yeah, and like this video if you would. That'd be great to let us know if we're doing good on this one, or if we need to do something different. So, my thing that I always pick out, and to be honest with you, it's not one thing that starts me off. It's not, distance, how far do I need to go? It's distance because I know I need to go further than what a standard passive HDMI cable is going to give me. Or I don't want to run like an AOC cable, or an AOC HDMI.
Or it's not there.
Or it's not there. That's the first thing that kind of helps me to pick and decide which one I'm going to use. Now, outside of that, once I know I'm going to be using an extender, I don't think there's really one specific thing that I use to pick that out, other than just the broad spectrum of whatever it is that I'm running into.
Now, one of the things you and I have talked a lot about is I do a flow chart on things.
Right.
When I lay out my job, here's what I need to accomplish from point A to point B.
Right.
Even before I get to the automation side. So that helps me determine what feature sets do I need audio return, do I need control through a Crestron or a Control 4, now that I know you.
Yep.
So what are the things I have to concern myself with? And if you'll switch to our overhead shot here.
Sure will. You got it. There you go.
I got it. We actually laid out things that are important to me. Now, this is not Adam's list.
No.
Because his list may be entirely different than mine.
Sure.
As yours may be. So do not assume that this is the Bible.
Yeah.
These are just things that I think about when I'm trying to determine which choice of extenders I'm going to have. Number one for me is resolution. What do I actually have to transmit from point A to point B?
Right.
It's that simple. Number two is HDR, because just because I need 4K, do I need 4K HDR? Am I looking at 4K from a PC or something that's not supporting that?
Right.
That's number two. Number three is my audio features. Do I need audio return channel? Do I need audio breakout? Am I sending audio forward? Am I sending audio backwards?
Right.
And if so, what kind? Then is control system interface. Now, this has become a big hotspot for me. We get a lot of phone calls. I need to tie this extender into my URC, my RTI, my Control 4, my Crestron.
Even Savant. Don't forget about Savant, because that's, and I'm going to touch base on that as well.
It's a little odd.
Well, it's not that it's a little odd. It's just that they use a different IR system than what most of our HD-based extenders are using at this time and date.
Or most of the manufacturers.
Right.
When you look at IR, Crestron, Control 4, Origin, Speakercraft, Niles, Xantech, RTI, URC.
You want to keep going?
That's what I can recall off the top of my head. All utilize the same basic IR pinout and data transmission scheme.
Right.
So if it's compatible with one, it's compatible with all.
Right.
And we have been very aggressive in getting as much of our product, particularly the HD-based T, into that format as we can. So that is under control system interface. We also have RS-232 there.
Right.
Because sometimes you just got to send a serial command because you need either feedback or the IR discrete commands are not there for that particular piece of gear.
Exactly. So you need to use, because you may just have the one wire going out there.
Right.
You may not want to use a secondary wire and save that one as a backup for something else that's going to be used in the future.
You don't know.
You don't know.
Last but not least for me is distance. The reason this is the last but not least because by the time you get through all these, you're going to determine, are you at HD-based T?
Right.
Or are you not at HD-based T?
Right.
Now, the minimum is something we get a fair amount of phone calls on.
Yes.
And minimum is more important, honestly, than maximum, because in most residential jobs, you're probably not going to go to the extreme capabilities of an HD-based T unit.
Exactly.
But you also need to understand, if you're going, I recommend 50. I think our bare minimum number is 35 feet for HD-based T, but that's on Cat 5. If you got Cat 6, that's still on the short side. Here's what happens. When you've got an extender and you're at a shorter distance, they assume that you're going a long distance. They're rating it for 100, 150, 210 feet on a 70 meter, and 300 plus feet on a 100 meter system. They are not expecting you to go 20 to 30 feet. So the transmitter is basically yelling at the receiver, and it will overdrive it. And when this happens, it doesn't work. You have a greater chance of it not working because you're too short than you are too long.
Right, right. So one of the things that, and so you've got your list, and I'll be perfectly honest with you, your list is exactly my list.
What?
When it comes down to it. It's surprising, I know, because you and I very rarely
agree,
see eye to eye on these things.
Except, well, it is Friday, isn't it?
It is Friday.
Okay.
So, now it's not Friday the 13th, though, is it? No, we're good.
No,
Oh, okay,
it's the 21st.
It's what, 22nd?
22nd.
22nd, one more day. Okay, so anyways, yeah, so for me it is honestly the resolution. Now, I guess for me the resolution and HDR are kind of one thing for me.
Now see, it used to be.
Right.
But because we do offer an inexpensive 4K extender that's not HD-based T, that does not support HDR, but it is very, very competitively priced.
Right.
And has a great picture.
So let's run with that idea then. Let's talk about a scenario, a specific scenario. So let's say, for instance, I have a standard system that I'm going out to, from the source closet out to one display. I don't need to worry about matrixing or splitting or anything like that. And I have a 4K DirecTV box.
Okay.
I have a 4K Blu-ray player. Or an Apple TV or something like that, and they're all going into a switch of some kind or
that
an AVR.
supports whatever.
Right, and then I'm going from there to a television that is HDR supporting.
Okay.
So with that in mind, out of our lineup of extenders, what are the few things? Well, actually, first off, out of that setup, what sticks out as something that you need to worry about?
Well, the HDR, and I'll tell you why. When you look at even our non-HDR, non-HD based T extender. It will still pass the requisite metadata so that it thinks it's got HDR capability.
Right.
And that can cause problems.
Right.
So if you can pass the metadata, you had better pass the data. So if you're going to do anything that supports HDR or deep color,
just make sure that it actually has the capability before you actually do it.
You definitely want to be into an HD-based T 2.0 chipset.
Right.
And the reason we say 2.0 is because there is HD-based T that supports 4K, but it doesn't support HDR with a qualifier on that today.
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 So, with that in mind, our go-to in that scenario where we need a 4K signal going from the source device. So let's say it's a Blu-ray player, or a UHD Blu-ray player.
Through an AVR.
Through an AVR, which all of that, let's just pretend all of that supports. You know, we're not talking about troubleshooting for that right now today, but we'll get back to troubleshooting next week, won't we? So we're going to talk about that next week. But for today, what we're working with is the UKA and the UK70 series of our extenders. So this is actually the CS HDBT P2 UK-70. Now I know that's a mouthful. It's a lot. If you put the UKA-70, it just means we're adding on the audio portions to it. However, in that scenario, we didn't need to send any audio back from the television to the receiver.
Right.
So your best pick in that option would honestly be the UK series.
And what's the U mean?
So the UK means it's UHD, so
Yep.
it's 4K. No, I don't know what the K means in that one.
It actually supports HDR.
Oh, it's KVM.
It's the KVM on that,
It's
the K.
the K, yeah,
But
yeah.
when you look at the U series, all of our U series support
Right.
HDR and deep color.
Right. So that way you know
Not
for
just
sure.
4K.
Yeah. So if there's a U in the model number, then that'll tell you that it supports the 4K and HDR.
Which is pretty much required for anything you're doing now.
Yeah, pretty much at this point.
That's not in a bar.
Right. Now, if you're doing a bar, that's a
The
different
whole
matter.
world changes.
Things change greatly with that, because if you are going to be
Now,
using it in a
while
bar
you
type
have
setup,
that in your hand,
yeah,
I want to talk about a couple of things, because number 4 for me was the control system interface. Now, when you look at this, there's IR in and out.
right,
Now, this is standard 12-volt Xantech Niles Crestron Control 4 RTI URC compatible.
right,
But there's something very, very important on this I want dealers to understand. When you look at the IR in, which in this case is the little white one, that is a stereo mini plug. My drawing is not very good, I understand that. That has the two black bars and the head.
Right.
It is a stereo mini plug.
right,
The IR out is the standard mono mini plug,
right.
which is standard for Xantech Niles, Crestron, Control 4, Speakercraft, etc., ad nauseum.
Exactly.
So, if you want to come out of your control system, any one of the above, into this, you do need a special adapter cable.
Right.
Now, that adapter cable, fortunately, is very, 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 very inexpensive.
Yes.
And it is simply a mono mini to stereo mini cable that floats the 12-volt signal.
Right.
So it doesn't pass down it. Now, this particular product is called the CS-IR-CC, IR connecting cable.
Yes. Now, where do we use that? Exactly where do we use it?
Well, let's take your control system. Let's say
Right.
you have a Control 4.
Right.
You have an IR port, and look at that. He's going to pull one out of the rack there.
Yep, and I'm making a mess at the same time.
Now, okay. So you have the IR ports right there on the back.
Oh, sorry.
We're fighting up for control. IR ports right there on the back that are mono mini.
Correct.
So this plug goes in here.
Right.
This is a stereo mini plug. Now we want to send the signal from this down the HD base T to turn the TV on or off.
Right.
So going into this unit on the input, wow, this is not easy, is a stereo mini jack.
Right.
Now what a lot of dealers will do, they'll just get a mono to mono, they plug it in, and what happens is they short the system out.
Right.
Because 12 volt gets dumped onto the signal.
Yep. And so it actually backfeeds into the controller
not
at that
good.
point, and it's really
Not
not
good.
good. You're going to damage it.
Yeah, and this is a whole lot more expensive
Then,
than what you want to cook.
yeah, exactly.
So with our adapter cable, the CS-IRCC, which is very, 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 very inexpensive,
Yes.
you can do a simple plug and play and you're done.
Yeah.
Now, let's take the other side of it. You want to come out of one of our
extender.
products, an extender, and go into a control system.
Oh, to receive back a
Right,
signal
let's
of
say
some
you
kind.
have a connecting block at the other end.
Sure.
And you have to send it to multiple
Yep.
IR emitters.
Yep.
So you do the exact same thing. You would come out with the mono mini side
Right.
into the stereo mini input on the connecting block.
And so then what you're able to do then is you don't have to do any splicing, any soldering, you don't do anything else. So you can go from the source side to the receiving side, or from the receiving side to the source side, and you can actually control and make the
Multiple
connections there,
items.
so it's nice and clean and tidy.
Yes.
You don't have to make a bunch of cuts. You don't have to use any tape or anything like
Which
that.
we
around
really
it, so-
don't like you doing that. First off, particularly on our IR receivers, it's a 32 gauge wire, and the chances of successfully stripping, tinning, and soldering that
Yeah.
are pretty slim.
Yeah.
So
now,
don't.
If you had to, and we're getting into IR community, we're talking about IR now, but if you had to, there are pieces out there that will give you a 3.5 breakout.
To Cat 5.
To Cat 5.
And we
so
do
that
sell
way
those.
you can do it that way and send it down to Cat 5 that way. Now, that's another discussion entirely for that, which we can talk about that later. Now, let's throw a little kink into this subject, okay? So same
Your life
scenario.
is your choice.
So, same scenario, but now we're doing a smart TV, and the client wants to send the audio from the smart TV to their surround sound unit.
In that case, we need the A series,
Right.
because the A gives us a couple of options. We can do audio return.
Right.
Now, I am not a big fan of audio return, and we have talked about this numerous times on here,
Yep.
with the exception, honestly, of Sony.
Yep.
Audio return tends to be a bugaboo in getting everything set up correctly to work.
Right.
But you have another option with this, which Adam will now give you in detail.
I sure will. So right here on the extender itself, not only are we doing the USB connection, as just like the UK series extender, this one here, but we are also doing IR, and we're giving you a Toslink passback capability. So what this is going to do, this actually, it gives you a really nice way of sending a signal back from the television that's going to be a reliable signal, because the reality, just like Brent said, is the ARC connection, while it's a great feature and it's a wonderful idea, it's kind of like Ethernet over HDMI, and it just didn't work, and it doesn't always work. There are companies, like you said, like Sony, who's using, if you're using a Sony TV with a Sony AVR, works really well because, of course, they've taken the extra time to work and figure it out on their own devices.
Internally.
Exactly. Now, even in that scenario, I personally don't like the way the ARC works, and so for me, I would rather take the Toslink audio out, go into this extender here, back to the receiver, back to the transmitter side,
And just take an optical input and select it for the TV.
Exactly.
It simplifies your programming. You're not having to change parameters on anything on the fly.
Right.
Which is a problem with ARC.
Yeah.
None of this is eARC.
Nope.
This is not eARC.
No. Yeah.
So-
eARC is not ready yet. They're still figuring all of that side of it out. Some of the
So
displays
you're
have it
not
already,
going to
but
lose
yeah.
anything
No.
by doing this over ARC.
Correct. Yeah.
So the optical is simpler and easier to use than ARC because there's no setting changes.
Exactly. Now, if you were going to be using ARC anyways, you're not, like Brent was saying, you're not going to lose anything. And specifically what he's talking about is Dolby Atmos, because you need to have an HDMI connection in order to do Dolby Atmos. However, correct me if I'm wrong, Atmos does not work on ARC.
Atmos does work on ARC.
Atmos
It's called
does
eARC.
work. eARC. Now,
eARC.
of course, eARC is a 2.1.
Right.
That's not ready yet.
Well, it is. And
Is it?
some of the AVRs have it. If you have, for example, our original Titan series cables supported eARC.
Okay.
Up to 100 feet.
Okay.
Passive cables support eARC. Denon Marantz AVRs support eARC.
Well, in the eARC, the eARC
You don't have to
setup-
have a 2.1 chipset
Right.
to support eARC.
Right.
However, to the best of my knowledge, none of the HD-based T products support eARC yet.
Yet.
And that's always the operative phrase.
How many times do we need to say yet? So, and of course, we're always working on things, everybody. So if you have any feedback for features like that, let us know. Again, everyone who's watching, I really appreciate it. Any comments, any questions that you might have, throw it down in the chat, the live chat. Again, if you're watching this after we have gone live and now you're watching it pre-recorded, leave your comments down in the comment section below. Give us a like, hit that little thumbs up thing, subscribe to our channel. Again, we look back at our channel lineup before, and it's still an astronomical number of people that subscribe to our channels, that don't subscribe to our channels that watch our videos. So if you're watching this video and if all this information is helping you in any way, please subscribe to our channel so you can get this and hit that little bell so you know when we go live.
And send money.
I mean, money's always good too, but
So, what's next on the extender agenda, young man?
well, let's flip things around. Let's do one more scenario.
Okay.
And this time we're going to go pretty basic. So in this scenario, I have an NVR of some kind. Let's just say
Okay.
I've got an NVR for my surveillance system. I want the NVR in the closet, and I want a television in my office that just shows those cameras, but I'm going a distance of 50 feet.
Okay, that's
Okay.
an easy one.
Right.
And not an expensive one.
No, it's
And
pretty
actually,
simple.
since NVRs are now up to 4K, it's still an easy one and not an expensive one because we're not supporting ARC.
Right.
We're not supporting typically any kind of KVM functions.
Right.
We're not supporting audio in any way, shape, or form other than audio that might be sitting on the cameras going forward to the television.
Right.
But we may be supporting 4K.
Yeah.
So we have two options on that, a non-4K and a 4K option that are very reasonably priced, simple and easy to use.
Right. So this here is one kit. This is not one 4K and one 1080p, but we do have a low-cost extender. This is the CS HDC5 EXT SRPOE. This is actually being, we also have the CS HDC EXT SRPOE. The 5 is taken out. The reason for that is we're also taking out the EDID capability, which is on this. Let's switch this over to the top-down view, and I can show you what that looks like. So on this transmitter, what we have here is we have
in and out.
And in and out, we have a loop out, but we also have an EDID function here with dip switches. So this actually has the capability of making sure that we have the correct EDID information going to the display or to the source.
Now this is important because if you're, particularly in an NVR DVR, if you get conflicting EDID back, meaning two displays, it will absolutely mess up the NVR DVR's ability to make a decision.
Right.
And you typically want to have a local monitor.
Yep.
And a distant monitor.
And so that's where that loop out.
Right. The loop out and the EDID
makes a
difference.
It's a really important thing. It makes a big difference with that. So,
however, I still would recommend our EDI DB blocker.
Yeah.
Just because it's a good shorty at a very reasonable price to not mess up the EDID capabilities of the NVR DVR.
Which we did talk about that in an earlier episode, so definitely go back and check that out after this one, where we talk about using the different using the different HDMI tools that we have for repair. We talk about the EDID blocker and where to use that in this scenario. Actually, it's almost the same scenario.
And if you look under HDM-EDI DB3 on your YouTube search, there's an excellent tutorial on that.
Right. So let's throw another one in. So now I need to go a super long distance. Actually, hold on. Let me back up. I need to go a really short distance.
It's you know what?
Yeah.
It's kind of the same answer.
So,
but there's two answers to the short distance and the long answer to. Here's the question: what resolution do you need to support?
So I need to support. Let's just say I need 1080p.
Okay.
Okay. We'll start there. 1080p, super short. Same scenario. I've got an NVR, right?
Okay.
And I'm going super short. I'm going under 40 feet.
Okay.
Okay. So in that scenario, what do I do?
Here's my suggestion: SDI.
SDI.
Now the nice thing about SDI, and we're going to hold this up a little closer to the camera. SDI uses coax.
Yep.
Now, the thing about SDI does not deal with the short distance issues the way a category extender does.
Right.
So you can go shorter 20, 30, 40, 50 feet on SDI, or you can go over 100 meters.
Right.
On SDI, depending on which coax you select.
Right.
RG6 is 100 meters, 330-ish feet.
Right.
RG59 is going to put you in the 225, 250 range.
Right.
Mini 59, if you still have it, it's going to put you in the 175 to 200 range.
And the reason for that, of course, is just because the gauge of the wire. There's less copper inside there. Like we always say, I mean, if you want to go further, gauge.
More copper.
More copper.
Now, the SDI gives you a tremendous amount of flexibility, and it also resolves some EDID issues within NVR's DVRs.
It does, and that's a topic that if you want more information on, give us a call. 386-492-8584 is our tech support line. If you want more information about the SDI, give us a call. As always, if you are designing a system right now and you need some extra help, or you just want to verify that what you've thought of as an idea will work, give us a call.
We're here.
Yeah, we're here. We're happy to help out with that.
It's a whole lot easier to do it beforehand
than afterwards.
Than make it work afterhand.
And the thing is that I'll be perfectly honest with you. We take tech calls all day, and we're happy to take the tech calls. But every once in a while, it's nice to get a tech call that's not a tech call. It's more of a design call.
Yeah.
Right. So now I need to go extra far. Okay.
What resolution?
I need to go 4K HDR extra far.
Okay, see, now you're starting to push the boundaries of common sense.
And I'm trying to make it rhyme as well. So I need 4K HDR, and I need to go extra far. Do I have a future in that at least?
No.
I mean, can I do that?
You ain't going to make it as a rap star.
All right, well.
However,
I guess y'all are
answer.
stuck with me now, so.
There is an answer to your question, young man. That is fiber.
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 So.
Not only is it healthy, It goes the distance.
I don't think you're thinking of the same fiber that we're working with
Colon
here.
below 2000?
Nope. So just make sure. Yeah. Anyways, so yeah, no, don't ingest the fiber that's used with this. So what he is talking about. Do you guys like our canned responses going back and forth like this? Is this good? If you guys like it, give us a thumbs up and a like on the video.
By the way, this is not rehearsed.
No, it's not. It's not scripted.
We just don't like each other.
If you guys like how it goes, let us know in the comments that you like the banter back and forth. But anyways, what we're talking about today is the fiber extenders.
Now, how many fibers does that take?
One.
Yep.
And it's an OM3. This is based on an OM3 fiber design. Now, of course, you could use OM2. You could also use OM4 because those are basically the same their quality of fiber. And that's a whole other video. In fact,
we did
a video on that. We may even do another video on it because we're always learning. We're always moving forward with things. So we may be doing another one on that later.
So the important question is, how far can I go?
So with this here, we can go over 100 meters. Or pardon me. There's the box for it there, that top one. Just double check me on that for the distance. I think it's on the bottom. And you can go 300 meters.
300 meters. That's almost 1,000 feet.
Right. So you're not going 100 meters, 300 feet. No. You're going 300 meters,
1,000 feet.
984 feet, almost 1,000 feet.
Effectively 1,000 feet.
Basically. So the main thing with these extenders is that they are using fiber. They are technically an HD-base-T extender, if I remember correctly. That they
start with the HD-base-T pre-drivers.
Right. So
now, what is the shortest distance you can take that?
Actually really short because fiber doesn't matter.
That is correct.
So you could actually go, if you needed to go super short and you couldn't get an HDMI cable in the wall.
Or you have a fiber HDMI cable that's been damaged.
Exactly. That's where the fiber extenders come into play. Now, of course, the nice thing about these is you do have, on these extenders, you're right, that's kind of difficult, and I'm upside down. You do have your RS-232 IR in and IR out on that extender. And so that means that you can do an RS-232 bidirectional communication, which RS-232 is bidirectional by nature.
Yes.
But you can also do bidirectional IR on this as well. So you can send an
IR signal. And it is the same 12-volt IR as our HD-base-T.
And what I did find out is you can do, on all of our extenders, you can actually do the bidirectional IR at the same time. I didn't know that, and I actually got a call about it before, asking if they could do bidirectional IR at the same time.
Because it treats it as two different data streams.
Exactly. So yes, technically you can use both of them back and forth. So when you are when you're designing these systems and when you're designing the need to use an extender, it's very important to know certain features that we've talked about today about when should I use, let's say, a fiber extender, when should I use an HD-base-T, when should I use a non-HD-base-T, when should I use an SDI extender. So in these scenarios, take into account your resolution, if you're doing HDR, the audio features, if you need ARC, or if you just want to break out the audio on either side, and actually and also your control system interface, if you can do IR or RS-232, or if you have to. If you don't have to do that, then
doesn't matter.
Take that feature and set it off to the side. For instance, our SDI does not do IR.
Or serial.
So at that point then...
And it's not PoE.
Exactly. You do need
or
power on both
POC
sides.
in the case of...
Yeah, power over cable. So with that in mind, use those things in mind. If you don't need IR, and you're okay with having power on both sides, and maybe there's a coax run already in place that doesn't have any breaks in it,
just
use an SDI.
Don't use any adapters. Make sure it is terminated with the 75 ohm BNC.
How often have we gotten that call?
Every time just about that somebody uses an SDI for the first time.
Honestly, I would say about 99% of the calls that we get on the SDI product
are because of adapters.
Are because of an adapter, or because there's a break in the line and they have used an F connector to
you can use a barrel.
Couple it. Yeah.
No, you can use a barrel.
You can.
What you cannot do is use an F to BNC adapter.
Right.
F to F, F81s that are 75 ohms work perfectly.
Right.
So you can go through wall jacks.
Yeah.
No problem. Now, let's talk about installation, because these are critical things that we also get phone calls on.
Yes.
That we will follow up again next week in Troubleshooting 102.
102.
Which is Friday?
Yes.
So, things to consider at your installation time. The quality of your category cable. Guys, when you buy garbage Cat 5 or Cat 6 cable that's a really, 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 really exceptionally good deal, it's going to bite you in the butt. So be careful with that. A good way to test it, honestly, is to put a speaker magnet over it. Because if it sticks to the magnet, it's got steel in it.
Oh, you're talking about the
category cable.
The category cable.
Yeah.
Well, and the coax for that matter, because you can get a steel.
Yeah,
with,
copper-clad steel works fine for this.
Yeah,
You're not going to have a problem on SDI with copper-clad steel.
gotcha.
You are, however, going to have a major problem if it's not pure copper category cable.
Right.
And we have seen some really, really bad category cable.
Right.
Termination quality. We harp on this a lot.
So, and let's talk about that. So, when you're selecting your extenders, you also need to select your terminations. Now,
And your termination skill level.
that's a touchy subject. So, here's the deal. We want to, of course, we say use ours because we test our products with our terminations and with our tools and everything. That's what we use to test them. We also test with our competitors, connections and everything else, just to make sure that you, the installer out in the field, aren't going to run into too many troubles. So with that, we have found that there are some things or some terminations that don't work. So, without naming names,
Pass-through terminations are scary.
right?
And it's not that the termination is inherently bad. It's the usage of the tool that bites you in the bottom.
Right.
Every time you use a pass-through termination, there's a blade in the compression tool that cuts the wire.
Right.
Now, unless that blade is brand new this morning, what it will do is it will push down on that wire and draw it out, thinning out the conductor instead of cutting it clean.
Do you need this anymore up here?
I do not.
Okay. So
you want it to be as clean a cut as you can, which means a fresh,
I'm going to borrow your black.
which means a fresh blade on your compression tool.
So like Brent's saying, and I'm going to draw it out here on the table really quick, just to give you all an idea. A lot of times what will happen is you will have a termination with the pass-through style. And what you have is if you would give me a top down on that.
You getting there?
And what you would have is you've got the individual strands coming in, and what will happen is those strands will then feed out. Let's see, I'm going to finish this off so you can see what direction. There's that piece, right? So you've got the strands coming in, and then they feed all the way through, and then you've just got excess strands that are there. The tool will come along, and it will actually make
I'm
the
going to cut your blade in here.
Oh, good call. Oh, because this is going to be another important thing as well.
Yes, it is.
So hold on to that orange because we're going to need to show them why. So this connection here, or this excess here, what will happen is you will get the blade, and the blade will come in here, and it will cut here, and it will then sever that connection there. Now the problem with this blade that they have on the end of this is that over time, like Brent was saying, is it will get dull, and it will begin to pull and stretch that copper. And then maybe the first time that you plug it in, everything's working perfectly fine, but over time that copper is going to want to kind of pull back on itself and pull away from that, which means you're going to get timing errors, you're going to get time correction
Now,
issues.
let's talk about what overtime means. How many times do you use a razor?
Until the little lubey portion of the top runs out.
How many times do you use a razor when it's comfortable?
Yeah, not too often.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, are your whiskers near as tough as a 24 gauge piece of copper?
I mean, I'm not Superman. I'd like to think that they're pretty tough, but not that tough.
No.
No.
So if I'm lucky, I'll get 3 uses out of a razor before it's tossed.
Okay.
And as you can see, I don't shave often.
Right.
So it takes very little to start wearing out the blade in this cutter.
Right.
So
Yep.
unless it's brand new this morning, today.
Yep.
Now, the reason he told me to hold on to the orange is this. This blade right here gets pushed down into this wire.
Right.
Now, as this blade starts to draw on this, as it thins out this wire, and this blade goes into it, there's not as much copper contact.
Correct.
And as copper contact diminishes, bandwidth diminishes.
So this piece here, the other thing that he's saying is when, of course, you've got your die that pushes up in here, what will happen is also certain brands will only have one tooth that actually gets pushed up into the strands of the category wire inside. So what you run into is you only have one point of contact to go ahead and pierce that connection, which means that if that one point of contact misses that connection or doesn't go as deep into that connection, or get enough copper, you don't have a good connection. The best way that I have found to describe that is when you have speaker wire. Speaker wire is a stranded wire, which means that if you strip back portions of it, what comes out is a bunch of strands. The problem that you run into is that if you take one of those strands and you do a continuity test on that one strand that comes out of that one bundle, you will get continuity because it has a connection. Technically, electricity will pass through. It is the amount, it is the bandwidth that doesn't pass
current.
through, the current. So what happens is that if you don't get a good connection through that into the copper of the category wire, you don't get the correct amount of bandwidth. You run into a bottlenecking issue. It's the same idea of that one strand. If you try and send 100 watts or more through that one strand, it's not going to work. It's going to burn up that one strand.
Now, something else that we have certainly found, which is odd, but it's very true. When you look at an HD-based-T extender, and you look at a non-HD-based-T extender, this costs a lot more than this does. However, the biggest difference is not the cost, it's the skill level required to make the product function.
Right.
The less expensive the extender is, the better you have to be at terminating your cable.
Right.
Built into HD-based-T are a lot of buffers.
Yes.
These buffers are there to deal with insufficient signal, to deal with less than perfect transmissions, and they cost money. When you get into an inexpensive unit, you have to give those things up.
Right. So you have to have, it's actually more forgiving to have the better extender than it is to have the
less expensive extender.
Exactly, because the less expensive, the more expensive extender, the HD-based-T, it, like you said, it has the buffers built into it to ensure that even a somewhat bad signal
It's still going to give you a picture.
It'll still give you a picture. Now it has to work harder. You may wind up with a warmer unit, which in fact
will kill it.
Will kill it. And so you still want to give it the best possible connection that you can, so it doesn't have to work so hard to recreate that image on the other side with the buffer. But again, with the less expensive units, you really need to make sure that you have your terminations as good as they possibly can be. And unfortunately, the only real way of testing that is to either
plug
get
it in.
a bandwidth tester, which costs
$12,500 on the low side.
We know because we've had to
deal with it.
We had to do it before. But the other way to test it is to actually plug the unit in. So the reality is, of course, with just plugging it in, unfortunately, it may work, and it may work for a little while, and then it'll stop. And the thing is that when you give us a call and say, hey, this piece isn't working, we understand it's not working, let's go through the troubleshooting, but my connections are great.
Yeah.
They are great. They really are. They were great 3 years ago when you put it in. They were great a month ago when you put it in. Unfortunately, something may have happened. Do us a favor. Follow us, chop the ends off, re-terminate.
And we're going to ask you to maybe send a photo of your work.
Right.
And it's not uncommon to hear, I've been doing this for 20 years.
Yep.
As have I. Actually, in my case, 35.
35.
But
do you know how old I am? I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
There is nothing I can do on video right now that's acceptable. We do know that when you're dealing with redundant data, a PC network, something like that, it keeps trying. Did you get? Did you get? Did you get?
Yep.
And it eventually connects.
Yeah.
These do not work that way. This is real time. If it ain't there, it ain't there. Have a nice day.
Well, and the reason for that is very simple. If you are using an extender after an AVR and you're trying to send that signal to the TV, if it worked the way that regular internet data worked, where it said did not get, send it again, you're going to wind up with audio
completely out of sync with the
video.
picture.
Exactly. So that's why whenever we talk about, in fact, that's another thing that we should discuss as well. Do I have it up there still? I don't know if you all can see this or not. Right here, I have a wireless HDMI extender. And we do get calls about those as well, and it uses IP. However, the thing with the wireless HDMI extenders is that they use IP. They use network-based, which means that it uses that buffering. It has that built into it, but it also means
which
that
does help.
It does help, but the problem is that you are going to get that delay, which is one of the problems that we run into. Now, there are systems out there that do very well with the delay. They do a very good job.
They have it built into them, so if you have an audio breakout,
yeah,
they have an algorithm built in that says, okay, I know I've got an encode decode time of this, so I'm going to delay the audio.
Right. It does a pretty good job with that.
But you pay a substantial amount of money for that feature,
right,
and it's worth it.
Right. It really is. It honestly is. So, all that to say, I think we're coming up on our time. Any last words or any last requests that you'd like to put
termination,
in?
Termination, and if I didn't mention it, termination.
So we wanted to take the time at the end of this episode to go ahead and show you how important the terminations are and what we run into.
One more thing. What is the actual performance difference between 568A and 568B?
My favorite color is orange.
That's as good a reason.
That's all I've got right now.
There is no difference. Now, When you look at a manual, it typically says 568B in the manual, including ours.
Right.
Do you know why Stuart and I put that in there?
Because we have to say something.
We have, because if we don't say something,
We're going to get questions
we're
as to
going to
which
get
one to use.
questions, so we just say B.
Yep. So it really
That's
doesn't
why.
matter. You can use 568A, you can use 568B.
As long as it's the same at both sides, and don't laugh about that one. I've gotten that call.
Well, and the thing is that's a true cable. That's a real cable. That's a switching
Right.
cable for what used to be required in the networking world, or an ad hoc cable.
Right. Well, when we see that typically is where you have two guys on the same job.
Right.
One terminating one side, one terminating the other side, and they haven't agreed beforehand.
Well, one name's Adam and one name's a hack. So.
You mean Brent and a Control 4 programmer?
All right, guys. Thank you again for checking in with us today on this episode. It is very important that when you do your terminations, they are at the highest quality that you can possibly give those terminations.
And at the same both sides.
And the same on both sides. If you guys have any questions about when you should use which extender, where you should use which extender, please give us a call. Again, our phone number here is 386-492-8584. That is a direct line into our tech support number. You can, of course, email me. My email is adamr@metrohometheater.com. You can email Brent.
Brent M at metrohometheater.com, or you can contact me directly at area code 386-846-7264.
Right.
And we do take your calls.
Yes, we do. So again, as always, thank you again for checking out with us. If this video helps you out, give us a like, give us a subscribe, so you can get into these live videos whenever we go live. We go live every week, twice a week, Wednesdays and Fridays at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Next week, we are going to be talking about a couple subjects. We are going to be talking about, on Wednesday, surveillance storage and getting the most out of it. We're also going to be talking on Friday.
Before we get too far, tell me about what you mean by getting the most out of your surveillance storage.
So just like we talked about today about the different feature sets and what you should be looking for the project, you also need to be wondering, well, what feature sets are my clients requiring, and how can I maximize the storage based on those requirements? And that's something really important that we're going to be talking about for the storage, because everyone's always looking to have more storage capability for surveillance, and we're going to help you pick out the best ways to get that surveillance storage as large as you can make. Well, not as large, but utilize it as efficiently as possible. So we'll talk about that on Wednesday at 3 p.m. And then on Friday, we're going to be doing our Troubleshooting 102. 102. There we go. Did I get it right? 102. There we go. So we're going to be talking about...
You have a degree with this, don't you?
Well, Troubleshooting 102, it's the little things in life. So make sure to check in with us next week, Wednesday and Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time on both days. We're going to be talking about those. Share, like, subscribe. We'll talk to you then. Don't forget, always reboot your equipment as often and as early as you can. I'm Adam.
I'm Brent, and have a great 3-day weekend.
We'll see you later.
Bye.